Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. I'm Kara Morris. I'm the president of LSIA, and this is our first meeting, I guess, of the school year. So glad to see you all here. So if everybody, first we're going to hear some announcements and police update, and then our friends from OPZ are here to talk a little bit about the zoning process and recent development in Linthicum or in the Linthicum area, and also answer your questions. But first, we could all stand and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Jonathan, do you want to go first? Because we also are going to hear from Susie and Dan, or for the police update, PCRC. Here, why don't you? So they can hear it on the live stream.
Thank you. The PCRC meetings have started up again for this year. It was last Wednesday, and they also are going to have the community meetings, which I'll leave here so you can take a picture of it, whatever. And it's going to be the third Tuesday of the month, and this is basically taking the police. The police normally come to give their information to us at our meetings here, but this is one of the things that were being scattered all over the county. And so now they kind of collectively are bringing the communities to this one meeting if they can to answer any of your questions. I could be the liaison for that if you need to. If you have questions for them, I'd be happy to do that. Although I'll need someone to cover for me this next week because I'll be out of town. So, but normally I'm at most of both those meetings. So if there's anything that you want from that. There's not much that was talked about. I think Pete was there, so he can fill in what he was talking about. So, and let's see, we had, I guess there was a lot of talk about the Brooklyn Park shoppers over there and what was the outcome of that, development and some other issues in the area. I think Pete might be able to talk about a little bit of that. I think we'll talk about that tonight also. So there wasn't much on the police force stuff that they really had any information about. They did talk about their new police station they're going to have built starting in next fall, I think. So it's supposed to take approximately a year and a half or two to get that completed in the same location they are. And I think there were some promotions by some of the officers there. Major Frazier is being, he got another, was he deputy chief now? I was looking for my notes. I was trying to get the acronym figured out. So he's now he's going to be a deputy chief. And other than that, I think that was about it. It was a short meeting actually for the first one we had there. So there's.
Okay, so they're rebuilding the police station where the current police station is?
Yes, there's an antenna there, a basketball court, a parking lot, and they've planned, I think there's a meeting scheduled for 9:25 over at the Brooklyn Park Library. If you want to go over there, the architect's going to be there to talk about that for about an hour, let people know what's going on. But they're basically going to build it on the same site that they're on, and then I guess they'll demo the old building and then have parking and things like that. So during the construction and the phasing, it's going to be
that's what I'm wondering. Where's our police station going to be? But okay,
yeah, it's
so
going to be a tight little thing for 2 years.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, okay, 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a perfect example of how we set off back to build it, rebuild it, and then we move it to the new half, and then we build the other half. It's a prime example of how we can actually start on site while it's still being.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Glad to hear it. Okay, thank you,
No worries.
Jonathan. Susie, Dan, do you guys want to talk a little bit about the maglev? Here.
And Dan will give you a brief explanation. I have the letter if anybody wants. Oh.
Now you got to say it again.
Okay. The SD Maglev is not going to be built. The FRA said no, so it was a big win for us, and we're going to have a celebration next week. So Dan's going to give you a very brief explanation, and if you want to see the letter from the FRA, I have it with me.
Hi, so congratulations to all of us and all of you that helped and sent letters in, et cetera. It paid off. The FRA actually paused the review of the environmental impact study since 2019, okay, August of 2019. They came out, we got a call from Senator Bidel that she was just notified by the governor that the FRA has ruled against the SC Maglev. The very next day, the official notice came out. And what's very unique about this is that most of the time, if a deciding agency doesn't want to go forward with a project, they basically inform the project person or company or whatever and say, hey, we're not going to research this anymore, and they just put it on the shelf. Okay, so it basically goes off to Never Never Land. They never come out and really say why. This time was different. The FRA laid out multiple reasons why it was completely incompatible with the area. A number of federal agencies had major heartburn with this being built. That includes Secret Service, Fort Meade, Department of Interior, NASA, et cetera, is a long list. Plus, they also cited the communities coming together and all these different organizations coming together, working together, and putting in, like we submitted with MCRT, a 360-some page document that basically took this thing on in about 5 major areas. And one of the things that we ended it with was, why are you thinking about spending all this money on this when you got Mark and Amtrak? Just keep working on that. Another big financial point, which I think helped us big time, how many of you are familiar with the high-speed train system that they were trying to build in they're still trying to build in California? Okay, that is now 10 times over budget. It is 5 or 6 years behind schedule. They've shortened it up, and they've yet to lay one piece of rail in this. So it's now coming in, they're looking at $330 billion, and it's not coming close being done. Oh. Thank you. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. So the big thing is, FRA said, no way, it cannot be, the issues cannot be resolved. It's not going forward. So thank you all very much for your time and support. Okay.
Yeah, and thank you too for all of your work on that. Okay, so as I mentioned before, we are joined by 3 members of the staff of the Office of Planning and Zoning, and they're here to talk a little bit about the development process, sort of what's been underway in Linthicum, and address kind of specific questions about like adequate public facilities and other issues that have come up with the community. So, Eric, are you going to start? Okay, so Eric Ketterling. Oh.
Hello, there we go. All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you all for having us tonight. I really appreciate coming here. Today's my first day back from a week-long vacation, so hopefully I don't forget to say anything to y'all. But if I do, we have 2 other great OPZ staff members that can cover me. So, slide, please. So just to kind of give a quick overview of what we want to talk about tonight, to start off kind of an introduction, an organizational chart, kind of show you all how big the Office of Planning and Zoning actually is. And then we'll kind of do a funnel down approach, a top down approach. We'll start with the long range planning and then talk about the zoning division and then eventually work our way to the development division
and then finalize it with the administrative hearing process. And we'll open up for questions at the end. So to start off, the introduction and org chart. I really just, and all the slides I sent to Kara, you guys are more than welcome to share it around if that's something you guys can do, as well as with our email addresses. I know this is a very smart group of people and dedicated people from what I've just heard about the community. So if you guys have questions that stump us tonight or we don't have the answer to, email us. Ideally, if you can email us one email with all your questions, we can get you everything. I like to give answers quickly, but I'd rather be more accurate than quick, right? I want to make sure we give you the correct information and we're not lying to you. We're not fluffing you. We want to be honest with you, right? And the one thing I tell people in all my presentations, all my groups I work with is a lot of people see us work, for an elected official or in a certain administration. The way I see it, I work for the county and I work for the betterment of the county. And part of that is taking care of the people that live, work, and are a part of this county, that enjoy this county. I don't want to lie to you. I don't want to, say something and just to get you along. I'm here for you as much as I hope you guys are here for me, right? And I can tell you guys are dedicated to your community, and I want to be honest and respectful of that as well. So back to the org chart. I just want to show, so we have multiple divisions within Office of Planning and Zoning. I'm in the long range section. Sterling Say back here is in the zoning division, and we have Adam Newble in the development division. While a lot of people often think one person in Office of Planning and Zoning knows everything in planning and zoning, that's rarely ever the case, right? I'm personally, when I work with the long range planning and I do the region 1 for the region plans, as I assume you all are familiar with, we're more visionary, more long range documents, big, thick master plans, while zoning does more of the interpretation of the zoning code and the development review. They work on the proposed projects, and we'll talk all about that throughout. But I really just wanted to emphasize that we're made up of a lot of people. And one thing too, I really want to also emphasize is people change, right? We get new positions, we get new planning directors. We're getting a new county executive soon. I know Mr. Smith is in the room tonight, so but processes don't change, not without big public involvement and county council and other law adoption processes. So while these people on this graph may change in the next couple of years or whatever, the processes we're going to talk about tonight likely won't. So really just want to emphasize that as well. Next slide, please. So long-range planning. It's really kind of made up of two different teams. We have a county-wide planning team, and that's going to be your general development plan, your water sewer plan, and other functional plans as needed. Again, think county-wide, anything that can really impact the whole county. And then we have the community planning team, which is more of the area specifics, like the region teams. We have town center plans, any other sector plans that may occur, as well as, just any things that pop up that are specific to communities, but result in, documents or of something that the county council can review and hopefully adopt. One thing here is, again, I like to make sure that when we are out in the public and talking to everybody, that we listen to you. I know there are a lot of different ideas. I know North County is a lot different than East portion of the county or Western portion of the county or South portion of the county. And every piece of the county is very unique. Every piece of the county has their own needs, their own desires, and their own, really, ways of life. And one thing, regardless of if it's a master plan or a process, we're here to listen to you all. And we really want to understand what is working for you and what's not working for you. Because even though oftentimes the Office of Planning and Zoning is rarely ever the final decision maker, we can at least listen and report your concerns, your issues, your problems to the people that have the opportunity to change, right? And we're going through a current a zoning code revision. I'll talk about this at the very end, where we're actually soliciting public comment right now for your input on the zoning code. So what are ideas that are working? What are ideas that are not working? We want to hear from you. And the more we can hear from you, the more information and the more data we can use to eventually send to a county council to hopefully get something changed for the betterment of the county. So Plan 2040 is essentially the heart of long-range planning and the heart of a lot of different countywide aspects, such as the water sewer master plan. The region plans came from the Plan 2040. Comprehensive zoning is a key piece of described in the plan. So a lot of things that impact your daily life today was originally from a master plan in the past. So the Plan 2040, hopefully by 2040, we'll be having this conversation to say, hey, what was done correctly? What did you like? And what should have been done differently, right? And we'll do this every decade or so, either to update it or create a new one. And then the region plans. I know the region 1 plan is mostly this area. It was recently adopted earlier this year. So I assume you all are familiar with it. But if not, again, there was more of a community-led approach to planning in the area, understanding the goals, ideas, and vision for the future for these different areas. And then again, I'll mention this at the end as well. There's a website if you're interested in more about the Region 1 plan or any other region in the county. And you can go in here and just kind of check everything out. So for the zoning division, we're getting a little more narrow here, right? I was very visualistic, very visionary, talking about, long range, 10, 20 years from now. But the zoning is more current, right? It is what's in the code today. And the zoning administration, zoning division, one of the key responsibilities there is to really interpret what the zoning code is and does for potentially different uses that come up, right? So I'm thinking like if someone were to create a business proposal for, I don't know, a lawnmower petting zoo, right? Something completely weird, never done before. How would that fit into our current code, right? So our zoning division would really look and analyze, where does this fit? Is it a zoo? Is it a lawnmower repair shop? We don't know, but we'd figure that out, and that is their responsibility to help understand how different pieces and different ideas that you all have or business owners have fit into the current code today. Oh, can you go back one slide, please? One other thing too is there is so Article 18 is the zoning code. So if I say zoning code or Article 18, it's essentially the same thing. And that's all online. You can kind of check it out and you can see what each category allows for within their zoning district. And I'll talk more about that in a second. But one thing I want to point out here is our land use and zoning web viewer is online, and it's a unique, cool tool where you can go see the whole zoning throughout the county. I know recently the Region 1 plan was adopted, so new zoning has been updated for the Region 1 area, and we are finishing up with the Regions 5, 6, and 9, which is more kind of the middle of the county and portion of the South County. But again, you can kind of see the different zoning categories, the different ideas for what could be in these areas in the future. And within the zoning categories, there are 8 residential districts ranging from intensity from 1 house per acre, essentially, all the way up to 22 units per acre. And then again, we have least intense commercial to more high intense commercial. Same thing for industrial, and there are some maritime as well. And then we also have 7 overlays, one of which is the BWI mixed use overlay, which I'll talk about here in a minute as well. So essentially the zoning division really helps answer a couple questions. How can you use the property, right? What does the zoning say I can do with my property? What is the distance the structure must be set back from the site? How tall can I build it? And how many lots can I subdivide the property into? So there's a minimum lot size that each subdivision requires. So if you cannot meet that subdivision, let's say you had 1 acre or a half an acre lot, you're zoned 1 house per 1 acre. You cannot subdivide that because then you would have 2 houses. You would have 2 lots that are too small, if that makes any sense. So there are a lot of things like that help limit the future aspects of development. And also, when you talk about one thing that's not on these slides is there is a landscape manual as well, that when there are two different uses next to each other, let's say you had a residential property and a commercial property, if the commercial property were to develop, there would have to be additional buffer requirements, stuff to that nature, to make sure the existing residential house is not negatively impacted by the new development. So, and then that is part of that, in addition to other bulk regulations such as the setback requirements, height requirements, and stuff to that nature, can all be found within Article 18, right? So if you're interested in reading more about that, you can go, again, to Article 18. I would Google Article 18 zoning code, Anne Arundel County, and it should be like the first link or so that pops up. And in that, when I mentioned a minute ago that there's a chart that kind of shows what uses are permitted in each zoning category. So, for example, you can't have a theme park in a residentially zoned neighborhood, right? So you wouldn't be able to find that in the residentially zoned code. But if you look in the commercial or other types, you may be able to find it there. And that would be, you can either see it as a P, which means it's permitted by right, a C, which is conditional, which means you have to meet certain conditions, or a special exception, which it's a whole nother application process, which we'll talk about towards the end of tonight. So the BWI mixed use overlay, I know this was an area that you guys had some questions on. Essentially, the BWI mixed use overlay is only within that green area. I don't know if you can see it kind of here or not, but it's one specific area, nowhere else found in the county, only in this area. The two big things that make this area unique is the fact that this area allows for certain uses right here, no matter what the zoning is, and then additional bulk regulations such as setbacks, height requirements, stuff to that nature. So again, the only thing that makes this unique is that anything in this, no matter what the zoning is, you could have any of these uses, from alcoholic beverage use to banks, multifamily, other types of residential, all the way down to retail specialty stores or for retail sales. So, and now if a property is zoned a certain way, let's say a property is zoned industrial within the BWI mixed use overlay, they can still do industrial uses on that industrial zoned land. But you can't necessarily have other uses that are not these on that industrial use land. This is 295 right here. 295. Yeah, ask what. Mm-hmm. Correct. And there are some R1 properties in the BWI mixed use overlay. If they are big enough, and if they can, again, you have to meet setbacks, you have to meet height requirements, you have to meet the regulations. But let's assume a property is zoned R1 and can meet regulations. In theory, they could build any of this as well. Next slide, please. So that wraps up this portion so far. If you have any questions, we can take them at the end, but I'm going to pass this over to Adam.
Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's having a good evening. My name is Adam Newble. I am a planner on the residential team in the development division of the Office of Planning and Zoning. Can we put up the first one? Today, we're going to the development division is broken into four main teams. The residential team, which I'm a member of, the regional team, the transportation team, and the critical area. team. We serve the same function, but towards different focuses, if you will. Go ahead, the next slide, please. And each of those, I'm sorry, back that up once. Back. Residential team handles all residential projects, subdivisions, institutional uses, things of that nature. The regional team handles more of the large mixed use commercial development throughout the county, reviews that for both subdivision and development applications. And the transportation team focuses strictly on transportation related issues, including APF, which we'll talk about more here in a few minutes. And then lastly, the critical area team. The critical area is anywhere within 1,000 feet of the shoreline. And there are separate special regulations that are required for that type for development in that area. And that team focuses and specializes strictly on development in those areas of the county. Go ahead. This is kind of a flow chart of the overall development process. There's three kind of groups, if you will. More of the first group I'd call more of a conceptual type of plan, which would be your sketch plan, which is kind of like a preliminary plan for a subdivision, or preliminary plan, which is for building and developing property. We go through that process and approve it and make sure that it fits conceptually into the development plan and and with the regulations. And then once it works its way through the process here, it'll switch over to either a final plan or a site development plan. That's where we review the nuts and bolts. We review things, for example, stormwater management, the flow rates, absorption rates. We test for APF at this stage usually, which covers schools, fire, roads, utilities, things of that nature. And then as part of that also is when you're doing a subdivision, you're creating a new record plat for the property that sets up the dimensions of the property, the shape, the layout, and the use of it. And then the last kind of small group of applications that we review as a referral agency, if you will, for building permits, grading permits, things of that nature, which are processed by the Office of Inspection and Permits, just to make sure that what is being proposed meets the guidelines of what's found, the regulations found in Article 17 and Articles 18 of the County Code, which are available online as well, and are an invaluable tool, reference tool, if you need it. Go ahead and advance one. This is kind of the bottom half of the flow chart. When you get down into this area is where you receive your approval, and it'll either be the final approval if you're doing a final plan, or if preliminary approval, that will allow you to move on to the final plan, and you repeat that process at the top of the flow chart. Sure. Yes. Before any subdivision, the county requires a pre-submission meeting with the county itself, and also requires 2 public input meetings. One that's to happen before the application is actually formally submitted to the county, and where they come out to the community, they talk about what they're proposing to do, answer questions from citizens and other interested stakeholders. And then there's a second one that's required 45 days after the initial submission. And that way, because some things may change in between that pre-meeting to that, once the application is submitted, certain things could change. Maybe your access won't be on First Street, it may be on Second Street, rather. And so that brings that back to the table and offers the public a chance to offer comment and input back into the process and get a better look at not just what was promised, but how it's actually unfolding. You're welcome. And as part of this process is called adequate public facilities, which I'm sure you guys are aware of. Breaks down into 5 areas: schools, public utilities, storm drainage, fire, and roads. And we'll talk about each one of those individually here as we go on the next slide or two. First group is schools. OPZ, the Office of Planning and Zoning, is not the one that actually develops the criteria. We defer to the school system. It's the county school system itself. They do the criteria. We send them copies of what's being proposed, head unit counts, things of that nature, and then they do their formula and come back and say, okay, we're going to approve this for 10 new students in elementary school, or 5 new students in middle school, and 2 new students for high school. We don't really offer an input. We provide them the information, and then they provide it back to us because they are the subject matter experts on their system. The next one, public utilities, can be broken down in a couple ways. And if it's well and septic, better. It's a review of what processes, what structures, and what's going to be installed to help control this flow of the water. Fire suppression and fire adequacy is reviewed by the fire marshal's office, and they look at everything from lane widths, fire hydrant locations, parking requirements, as far as is there enough space for the county's emergency equipment to get to each individual house or structure, home or structure. And then lastly, roads. Development passes the test when if it creates 50 or fewer daily trips a day in a traffic study. If it goes over that, they have to mitigate that in some fashion, and it's the transportation team that helps develop that mitigation to offset the negative effects, whether it's road widening, extra shoulder width, new stop signs, what have you, depending on the circumstances. Development modifications. Based in Article 17.2.108 is where, in the section of the code where it authorizes or grants the ability to modify provisions of the code. There are 5 criteria. Sometimes it may be a process modification. For example, you're doing a minor expansion on an existing building, your 500 square foot classroom extension or storage area. Instead of going back through and making the applicant go through a preliminary plan, a site development plan to get, and then your permits, if the criteria can be met for the modification, you can combine both. It's taken lightly. You have to, one of the first criteria is proving a hardship. Yep. Number 1 here, practical difficulties, unnecessary hardship from the strict application of the code. And that can't be because it's going to cost me a lot of money. That's not a justification for granting a modification to the code. Second, minimizing any environmental impacts that development or that modification will have. For example, okay, we're going to grant you increased density, but we want you to utilize a cluster design, which concentrates the development on one portion of a large tract of land rather than spreading it out over the whole. Let's say you have a 50-acre tract and you develop 5 acres worth over here. You're still setting aside 40 plus acres over here that is not being developed. Go to the next one. It can't have a negative effect on public health, safety, or welfare. It can't cause injuries to other properties or neighborhoods where the facility or the property is located or the request is located. And the modification's not meant, the fourth one here, it's not meant as a process to get around certain aspects of the code because you just don't, it's inconvenient. You can't have the effect of nullifying itself to allow something else. And then last but not least is the public notice requirement. This can be accomplished one of two ways. If it's part of an overall larger development or project, that needs to be brought up in the pre-submission meeting and talked with the community before the applications are even filed. And then they need to follow up with the meeting minutes and the resolution to that in a mailing to all the attendees afterwards. The other way, for example, a standalone, or somebody wants to put a pool in their backyard and they I'm not 100% sure. I would have to get back to you. If got you. Correct.
There's a big equity issue about pressure. How concerns have that, this pollution, yeah, so I think we're all kind of aware, especially being so close to the issue there. And I would like to see some, especially in Animal County, we kind of maybe reduce funding someday. Aviation planning is very fascinating. I can go on that, but it's not, unfortunately, it's not listed. There's no answer.
There are two from Anne Arundel County and two from Howard County that are now on the Maryland Aviation Commission, and they're to represent the interests of the county and the residents. And that's one of the big issues we keep hearing is that the noise and the pollution, but primarily, if it's noise, you got the pollution that comes with it. Okay. And we don't see a mechanism to basically block land and say, look, it's just like immediately south of the airport. Okay, great. Whereas the driving, a golf course or something, fine. That was blocked off. It can never be built on. But we're finding with the research that we've been doing over the years, it goes a whole lot more than just 4 miles out. There are communities that are being hammered, and I mean seriously hammered, and they really shouldn't have built anything there but maybe commercial areas. So that's why I'll take it back. There's got to be a mechanism that we would think that needs to be added into the review process to look at that.
We don't do residential.
A lot of zone, and they allowed for hotels, they allowed for offices and whatnot there, and limited support pieces for that. But now the two big items that are in there are residential, multifamily residential. They're there now, but that's one of the pieces.
They're being hammered. They're getting 80 and above from early in the morning all through the entire school day. Every people in there. So that's disrupting learning right there in that school.
And the quality of life in Porterfield Farms, they're getting.
But we've been researching this and building information. And it's clear there is an issue. And I'd like to hope that some way in zoning we will all consider take that into account. Because we can noise.
So one thing, I think there's a lot of good ideas we hear from all over the county about how can we make sure development happens in a way that benefits people rather than is adverse to the people who are going to live there. I think what in order to implement new ideas and new good ideas, especially for noise, for example, because I know there are height limitations near the airport, but the noise is an issue. Unfortunately, it's my knowledge, and I can confirm there are no noise aspects in the code for us to enforce. If it's not in the code, it's very difficult for planning when we review plans and development to enforce something if it's on the code, because that opens the county up to being sued, right? So what I would encourage this group and every group I talk to, if there's something you're super passionate about, talk to your elected officials and work with them to get something into the code, because we need that's essentially our law, right? We use that every day to make sure the development matches what it said. And one thing I forgot to mention a minute ago is the TOD overlay. When I was talking about the BWI, the TOD overlay exists, but it's not in code, right? So there are no real regulations in TOD areas. However, we can use the TOD overlay zone as, hey, that's encouragement, right? We can encourage people to come here. But again, we can't force anything to happen here because it's not in code. And the same thing happens with this regulation. We can encourage all day long to developers like, hey, we shouldn't be building houses here, or we shouldn't be building this. We need this, we need that. That's great. But a developer can be like, cool, I'm going to do this anyway. Right? And whether that be good, bad, or ugly, that's the reality of the situation, unfortunately.
So I wanted to just go back to the schools issue. So I get that it's the school, it's AACPS that says whether or not the school right is open or closed. Right. So where do they get their, what determines that? Like, is it just, okay, this is the capacity for the school, so if you're 89 students beneath that or below that, then there really is, then we wait until you're at capacity? And then I guess my main question is about the overlay. Are there different, do the same rules that would apply elsewhere about, school capacity apply in the overlay? So if the ACPS says it's closed, then it's closed even to development in the overlay. Okay. Mm-hmm.
I think what they told us was around September of each year, and then that September of, let's say this September, they took a snapshot. That data is going to be given to a report that is given to the council in like March, April of next year, somewhere in the early months of next year for the upcoming year. So it's a weird cycle, but the school systems, they're the ones that actually do the projections based off enrollment, based off of developments that have come through and been approved. Each of the housing units, whether it's an apartment or if it's a townhouse or if it's a single family, there's a score that's associated with it as far as the amount of kids that potentially will be in that development. And so they use that and apply it to their calculation. They formulate that final data, and then they give it to the county council to actually officiate it, if you will, to say, yes, that is the approved number that they can then use to determine whether it's closed or open. But it is a system that is sort of ran inherently by the school board and the staff that's in there, and is literally given to the council once a year. I think we've tried to update that with policy here recently to try to get, and Bob, actually, you got the, and I hate to even put him on the spot because he works for this, he's the voice of Anne Arundel County Public Schools. So when you get those phone messages, it's Bob right there. He's right there. And so if you didn't know that, he is God when it comes to the voice of Anne Arundel County school system. And he lives here right in your community. And we've tried to work with the school system to get a more recent, so when we're voting on that next year, that enrollment, whether it's closed or open, it's a more closer allocation of the date of when they take the snapshot. But historically, it's been that, I think, somewhere around September snapshot. That is true. The council does make the final decision on whether a school, but the data that's in there is produced by the school system. But we do have the final say on approving the legislation that makes it official.
if that makes any sense. What do you mean the maps? So yes, correct. They just did rezoning of the school district for southern portion, right? Correct. That is a static sort of number, or I'm sorry, linear lines and stuff like that. They don't move lines. It's only happened here recently with the northern portion, which was done like last year or the year before, and then the southern portion done here within the last few months. And before that, I can't even recall when the lines were redrawn. Correct. Mhm. That's true. That's true. The reality is the school system has about 96,000 school seats. They have about 86,000 students. So the idea was for the schools that are already populated, if we rezone, because most of the schools that were at capacity were up north, not the ones down south. And so if they shift students south, you would take advantage of that capacity that we already have in the school system. So that was the intent behind the redistricting.
But it's my impression as my children went through the school system, we were always overcrowded. Every school they were in was overcrowded. So while we might have 96 seats and only 86,000 students, going forward, are we going to be adjusting these schools each year? Then how? I struggle to wrap my head around how we can do so much development then. And I don't know for sure, so somebody please correct me, but I have heard that they want to develop the quarry off of B&A. I have heard it can be anywhere from 500 to 1,000 units. That said, if half of those have students, North County cluster is not going to be able to absorb that. Our roads here won't absorb it. Absolutely. And I struggle with that.
But I will answer.
Private school, I'm from zoning, and so I'm not official on the school thing, but there are ways around it for developers. If you do 55 and older, there's no school-age children. So you could develop a 55 and older facility, no children, so there's no school impact.
No.
I don't know what the query.
No, not that I'm aware.
And also, if you do one bedrooms, like apartments, they don't attribute students to that either. I don't know the query.
Two Rivers, prime example.
Yep.
Two Rivers, a prime example.
Well, it's part all age, part 50, but they. Correct. Well, they start that way, and then they amend it once the school's open. And also, if a developer applies and the schools are closed, after I think it's 5 or 6 years,
Yeah.
they can build,
It's just getting into
regardless. Right,
Waiting list.
seven, whatever the number is. Don't quote me on the number, but at some point.
So if I can answer the question about the development that's off of the Belgrove Road quarry, that is a rubble landfill. It is still in operation right now. What's a hill? It's a hill. It's a mountain right now. That they just went through a legal battle with, I think, the county, as well as they had some internal sort of friction amongst their leadership, the ownership of the company. And so what you should know is the county right now, the way it's zoned, it's about 180 acres to be exact. And of that 180 acres, most of it is, I believe it's R5. So if you do 180 acres in the times 5, that gives you sort of the ballpark of potential capacity. What I have wanted to do with that and tried to work a deal with the county exec is to limit them, not limit them, was to agree to allow them to change it so they can build a warehouse instead of all residential. Because I know that the school systems up north are already at capacity. And so the goal was they were going to spend 25% of that acreage on open space, parks, things like that. 25% was going to be towards a couple of warehouses, maybe 3 of the warehouses. And then the other half, the 50%, would be residential. And so my thought process was if they're doing 80 acres of housing instead of 160 acres of housing, that's going to benefit us. Like, that's less capacity on the infrastructure. So that's the deal I've been trying to work for since Steve Shue was in office, quite frankly. Correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So here. Correct. So they can't. If whenever they start any development, if they don't meet the FPF, if the schools aren't open, they can't build. It doesn't matter. So that's still going to delay it. Yeah, it might be 7, but you're correct. So, but you guys. So here's the bigger point. When a lot of these decisions were made, as far as the overlay, for example, I work at NSA. I'll be transparent. I've been there since 2003, off and on since 2003. We're next to a huge military installation. We're next to an airport. The bulk of the jobs that are in Anne Arundel County are at those locations. And so if the reason there's a demand to build near these clusters is because that's where the jobs are. It requires us to do less on transportation. It requires us to do less because if you have everyone living, spread out throughout the county, you're going to get a lot more traffic on the roads. And so people typically like to live where they work. So that's where the demand is driven from. The other thing that we benefit from, and it's a curse, is because of Fort Meade. When the BRAC occurred, 2008-ish timeframe, when it moved all those jobs here, that was a plus for us. Some of us probably work on Fort Meade because of that BRAC transition. The problem is it's going to drive developers to try to purchase land from homeowners. Not you all specifically, but homeowners will sell their land. And as long as that zoning is that way, that's why it's so important that you to participate in the Region 1 plan. And if you notice, I actually downzone or kept a lot of the areas that you all asked me to reduce the zoning for, because that literally is the base of a foundation for how you get future developments. Our problem was in the 2000s, we approved a lot of Cedar Morris PUD, for example, in 2007, 2008. It was like 1,500 units. No school was approved to be built when that PUD was approved. There were many of them like that occurred during the bubble, the housing market bubble, where they got approved, but then the market turned, and so those developers sat on the projects for like 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So around 2015, 2016, when the market started to turn around, you saw this influx of development. Well, that development had already been approved 8 years earlier, and so you're just catching all of it in a very compressed window. As they start to take advantage of this window to sell and build property. So that's sort of yes. Correct. Yeah. Check. Correct. So I would say that previous to the Region 1 plan, those proposals had sort of been in the books for the last like 5 or 6 years that I'm aware of. So I don't know if they just, which one was in the books? Because Hoyt has been on the, so the Hoyt project has been Aerotropolis, Mitch Weber, and all those folks have been sort of talking about development off West Nursery Road for 20 plus years. Yeah, yeah. Mm. Yeah. I thought it was going to be mixed use. That's what yeah. I always assumed it was going to be a mixture of both. You will hear in the county the whole housing crisis and what each of the districts, because we're getting beat up on both ends. There's the folks who are saying, and I hate because they made this great presentation. We're getting beat up on both ends because we're getting hammered on, and I'm even getting beat up because the housing advocates are saying to me, well, Pete, you're downsizing in the region plans. You're downsizing all of these areas that could have more housing. I'm literally getting beat up. And then, we have these meetings saying that it's like we're damned if we do, damned if we don't to some extent. But I have tried my best to make sure, especially Region 1, was not done in a way that just opened up the floodgates. In my minds, I feel like I also, just like with the rubble landfill, I'm trying to avoid the max density by working with them to do the warehouse, because that means they're not going to do 50 other percent of residential, because we can't, no matter what the situation is, if a developer or a company, if they sit patient enough, whatever project they have, with time, it's going to happen. So in my mind, if we agree to something that's small, once it's built, you can't build a skyscraper, because that's what's going to be coming next. We're going to be going up. We're going up. Well, I know 180 feet is the max in mixed use zoning areas, and then you have the height limitation about the airport. Great. Yes. There was I did in Jessup, for another prime example. In 2015, Jessup JIA was upset about a development that was coming there off, right on the Howard County line. They wanted to put R10 residential area in that area. That's exactly what they wanted. And with time, they could have succeeded with it. So what did I do? I worked with them to say, no, I don't want that. We actually made them build a pumping station. It was $1 million they paid for the pumping station, but we allowed them to build 40 acres at instead of trying to get that R10 at R2 density on the R1 land that was over there. So they only got 40 houses out of the equation. And in my mind, that 80 houses ain't going nowhere for the next 50, 60 years. Instead of, it could have been R10 on 40 acres and been 400 houses. That's exactly what it could have been. And so we worked out a plan to make sure they got the bare minimum, because once it's developed, it's really hard to redevelop it because those neighborhoods stay there for so many years. But I do want them to continue with their presentation.
I did want to add to what Mr. Smith was saying is when we talk about at the beginning with notifications and signage and all this stuff, it's important to stay informed in the community. And I know you guys are. It definitely sounds like it. But again, so when development and these meetings, these community meetings happen, it's important to go out and show your face, right? Like, because this is what I talked about. We need to hear what you're thinking. We need to hear what you're feeling about your community. It's really important because, again, I work for the betterment of the county, and I need to know who and what I'm supposed to do from a long range planning. I don't have the code to either yes or no. I plan for the visionary future, right? And when I hear things like this, even though I haven't worked in Region 1 yet, I'm going to go back and I'll keep this in mind. So when I do work up here, I understand pieces of this bigger puzzle of the Region 1 area. So again, I really want to appreciate the passion and the comments you guys are making tonight. And again, just stay involved and make sure you show up when there's opportunity for you to show up. So again, I'm going to pass this over to Sterling then.
Okay, so let me introduce myself. Good evening. I'm Sterling Say. I'm the planning. Is this working? Can you hear? Nope. Good evening. I'm Sterling Say. I'm the planning administrator for the zoning administration, Anne Arundel County. And I've been asked to talk about the administrative hearing process. So it's the Office of Administrative Hearings here. The Office of Administrating Hearing hears petitions for and issues decisions regarding zoning reclassification, special exceptions, variances to zoning, critical area provisions of the code. Article 18, which we've talked about earlier, of the Anne Arundel County Code gives the administrative hearing officer broad authority over Article 18 and Titles 8, critical area overlay, and Title 9, bog overlay, in Article 17. He may vary or modify any of the provisions in Article 18. He can approve or deny special exception uses, may impose conditions, restrictions, and limitations on the approval. In addition, he does reclassifications and rezonings. Each of these requires an application before the AHO, that's Administrative Hearing Office, I'll use it as short, and each of these has specific requirements that they have to find that they meet in order to grant any application. So they're very specific requirements. It's not just sort of a general, what he can do, what he does. Hearings are public. Letters are sent to neighbors within 300 feet prior to the hearing, as well as anyone who's on a list. I'm sure your association is, that the constituent services keeps. Signs are required to be posted on the property. Generally, it's 14 days before a variance or special exception, and 30 days before an administrative rezoning or critical area reclassification. Next one, please. Oops, I'm going out of order. At least 1 week before the hearing, the findings and recommendations of the Office of Planning and Zoning, along with agency comments, are posted on the AHO website and emailed to the applicant and any of their representatives. So ahead of the hearing, at least a week ahead, you're going to know what the county's position is, what the agencies have said, and we send them to the health department. We send them, it depends on what it is. If it's a critical area, it goes to the critical area commission. It gets reviewed by in our office. If it's a residential, it might be the residential team, and so everyone's going to know before you go in exactly our position, which gives an opportunity to either disagree with our position or agree with it. And at the hearing, you'll have a clear idea of what you need to do. So at the hearing, everyone who wishes to speak is sworn in. And Kara pointed out to me that on the website, it was confusing that you needed, if you were a representative, you needed a special form. And that would be, let's say you came as a personal, on your own private time, and then you wanted to speak for this association, you'd have to have authority to represent the association. But if you're speaking as a private individual, everyone who comes has the opportunity to speak, be heard, and that way the administrative hearing officer takes all the information to make his own independent decision based on the evidence at the hearing. Following the hearing, the administrative hearing officer has 30 days to issue a written decision based on the public hearing. Any aggrieved person that participated in the hearing has the right to appeal to the Board of Appeals within 30 days of the date of the decision. And regardless of the application, I'm going to talk about all the different types. It's always the same process. It's the hearing and the ability to appeal and the public hearing where you can speak and hear your concerns, whether you're the applicant or a neighbor. We want to know what you think about the application. Okay, so let's go into the different ones. Variance. That's probably most that we get are variances. And what's a variance? A variance is a request to deviate from the current zoning laws. Variances are typically granted when a property owner demonstrates unique circumstances or hardship. Article 18, Title 16 provides that the administrative hearing officer may vary or modify the provisions of Article 18 when it's alleged that practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships prevent conformance with the strict letter of the article, provided the spirit of law is observed, public safety secured, and substantial justice done. So the hearing officer has to decide that either because of unique physical conditions of the property, such as irregularity, narrowness, shallow, lot size or shape, or exceptional topography, inherent in that there's no reasonable possibility of developing a lot in strict conformance with this article. So if you have a lot and yours is the same as everyone else in your neighborhood, and some reason you think that you should be able to come closer to the lot line, there's nothing really unique about your property, most likely you may not get a variance granted because you may not meet that requirement. The other requirement is because of exceptional circumstances. Other than financial considerations, the grant of a variance is necessary to avoid practical difficulties or necessary hardship and to enable the applicant to develop the lot. So often the hearing officer finds that there are exceptional circumstances, and each case is unique. Just because your neighbor gets one doesn't mean necessarily you'll get the same outcome with yours. They also have to find that the variance is the minimum necessary to afford relief, and it won't alter the central character of the neighborhood or the district in which the lot is located. It won't substantially impair the appropriate use or development of adjacent property. It won't reduce forest cover in the basically critical area. Won't be contrary to acceptable clearing and replanting practices required for development in the critical area or bog protection, and won't be detrimental to the public welfare. And if the property is in the critical area, which, as you heard, is anything within 100 feet of bay or its tributaries, there are additional, more stringent requirements, and those go to the Critical Area Commission. I don't know if you have much critical area here, so I wasn't going to really go into those, but they're all in the code written out if you're interested in it. The hearing officer can grant special exceptions, and in order for a special exception, you have to go to a hearing and have it approved. So what's a special exception? A special exceptions are uses that would not be appropriate in the zoning district generally or without specific requirements to have compatibility. And there's a whole list in the code of special exceptions. The requirements often relate to lot area, the requirements to get the special exception, setbacks, vehicular access, limits on hours of operation, and screening. In addition, they're general requirements. So let's see, a special exception use would be, I'm just trying to think of one, a landfill. Let's think of Belgrove. And we've taken that out, but they would have had to come in to get a special exception to operate that use on their property. And there are a lot of special exceptions, and most of them are in residential districts, which could be veterinary clinic. Sometimes is a special exception. So there are just a lot of uses there. But then, in addition to the specific requirements for the use, which might be setbacks, hour of operations, there's general requirements that apply to all of them. That the use won't be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare. The location, nature, and height of each building, wall, fence will be compatible with the appropriate and orderly development of the district. That operations related to that use won't be more objectionable related to noise, fumes, vibration, or light to nearby properties than other operations in other uses allowed in this article. And that one a lot of times trips people up. They might find some property that has some wetlands and it's sensitive and it's next to other things. And lots of times it's found to be more objectionable at that location, but it would have been okay maybe at another location. The proposed use won't conflict with an existing program, public facility, public service, school, or road. It has written recommendations of the health department. The health department comments on every application that we get, whether it's a variance, a special exception. We need to know that the health department says it can work, it's far enough from wells, that it won't affect other things. It's consistent with the general development plan, which is the Plan 2040 that you heard about earlier at the first presentation, that there's sufficient evidence of public need for the use. And when people say public need, we think that it's needed there, that there's not enough of those services. But judicially, it's been decided it's expedient, it's convenient for the public. It's not our thought of what need would be. So all those gas stations that want to come in, instead of saying we need more, they're saying, well, it's expedient, it's going to be convenient. That's what we look at as need. And it'll conform to the critical area criteria if it's in the critical area, and that they have a site plan that demonstrates they can comply with the landscape manual. And again, you heard if it's usually a special exception use, it's not compatible next to residential, so they have to do extra planting, screening, fencing, something to limit the impact. The administrative hearing officer can grant zoning reclassifications, rezonings. We're not having many because we're in the comp plan and everybody's already gone through the process. But in order to grant it, and it can be from a more intense district or a less intense district, you know, you could go our administrative rezonings. One more. There you go. Thank you. And so it could be to increase your density, like as Pete was talking about, someone wanted R10, and if they went for rezone, they could say, well, I prefer R1, and if they meet the requirements, the hearing officer could grant it. But in order to grant it, we call it the change or mistake rule. They need to prove that there was a mistake in the zoning map, which is usually difficult to do because there's a presumption that the council, when they zoned it, knew what they were doing. So, or that the neighborhood has changed to such an extent that the map should be changed. And sometimes a new road coming through or a closure, that might be really a change in the neighborhood. Sometimes if others have gotten rezoned, maybe during comp zoning, and now all of a sudden this one didn't, and it just doesn't quite fit, that could be a change in the neighborhood. So there's specific things that could be a change in the neighborhood. In addition to that, they have to find that the new zoning conforms to the general development plan, again, Plan 2040, because that lays out what kind of land use. There's a land use provision. It tells what uses each land. They're broad uses. I might say commercial. It doesn't really say it's a C1 local commercial or a C4 highway commercial. It just says commercial. So it's kind of a broad sweep with the general development plan. There has to be compatibility between the uses of the property as reclassified and the surrounding land uses so as to promote health, safety, and welfare of present and future residents of the county. And if it's in the critical area, again, there's additional requirements. The hearing officer can do critical area reclassifications, but you don't really have much critical area. But and I might skip it, but there's three critical areas. There's IDA, intensely developed, LDA, limited development, RCA. Speed it up. Oh. Next. Okay. Sorry. And so in order to grant it, you have to find, similar to a rezoning, that there was a mistake. But in the critical area overlay came in December 1 of 1985 when they mapped the entire county. And so you have to find there was a mistake at that date and not something that happened past then in order to be reclassified. And then, of course, the classification has to conform to the state and county critical area mapping criteria that conforms to the environmental goals and standards of the general development plan, again, Plan 2040 in this case. And there's compatibility between the use of the property as reclassified and surrounding land uses so as to promote health, safety, and welfare of present and future residents of the county and effective environmental land use management. And those are the only things the administrative hearing officer has the authority over. So, any questions? Okay, why don't we all come up here? Oh, and one last thing. One last thing before. Eric mentioned that we are doing a update to Article 18, and when it was passed in 2005, we've never had a cleanup bill. And after all that time, there's conflicts. We've gotten text amendments, and things don't work, and things have changed a lot. So it is online if anyone wants to look at it, and there's a place to comment if you have any interest or questions or want to make any questions. And you have until September 19th that we're taking comments, and then we're hoping in November to take it to the council.
One thing before we open it for questions, I just wanted to point out a few key links that we've kind of talked about. Pretty much everything you've heard tonight can be found on these web links. If you get the presentation, you can click right on it to take you right to the website. First is the hub site. That's the region plan. That's more long range planning. Again, Region 1 was just completed. So if you want more information about the finalization of it, I'd check that out. Zoning information, pretty much everything about Article 18's there. You can find a lot of good information about, again, more of the department, the division. Development division, same thing. Everything Adam kind of talked about is there as well. There are two things there I want to talk about. The land use navigating system information. That's kind of where you can kind of track and see different proposals and stuff of that nature. You can really see community meetings in the area as well. So that's a good website to check out. And then the moderately priced dwelling unit program. I know we didn't talk about that much or maybe at all, but I know that was a question we were kind of talked about before coming in. That's something, to my knowledge, just became effective July 1st of this year. So it's in its infancy. The county is essentially assisting with the NPDU bill. The ACDS, I can never remember the acronym, Anne Arundel Community Development Service. Yeah, Community Development Service. Thank you. They're the one managing it. So you click on that, that'll take you right to their website. You'll get a whole lot of information. You'll see all the pieces of information there. I'd really encourage you all, if you're interested in or learning more or potentially using or helping or whatever, to check out that link. That's going to be a very important piece of information for you. And then again, the administrative hearing section as well. Check that out. Everything Sterling just mentioned a minute ago. So, great. Yes. Yeah, I did not talk about that tonight. Probably should have. I meant to at the very beginning of our org chart. Yeah, so zoning enforcement. So if you think there is a zoning violation, that somebody is doing something they should not be doing, that's against code, against law, you can submit a complaint. I think you can do it anonymously, as well as give your name if you'd like. If you give your name, they can follow up with you. If you don't, it's very difficult to know who you were. But yeah, so it's something that our teams take very serious. I know we have a great team. Ulrich, I work with him every now and then. He's fantastic. So, and we take every complaint serious. So if you do have a complaint on a neighbor or a property or whatever, feel free to please submit your complaint, and the county will check that out, and then we'll follow up if needed. The zoning enforcement, there's a website. So if you go to our zoning division page, I think it should be on the left portion of the page that would say zoning enforcement, and then there should be a link that says submit a complaint or something to that nature. Yes.
To drive by all sorts of things and not take action. So put your complaints in.
So I have a question about the 160 units where Hoyts is currently. Is that subdivision approved as we sit here and talk or not? Okay. I'll leave you my. Okay. And am I right that on the 6-year rule, I think in a slide you had, sir, you have to meet everything else and then except school capacity. Is that right? I think it was on one of the slides he had earlier.
The purpose of that was to give a local jurisdiction to address the gap efficiency existed.
Can you, if you go back to one of the first 2 slides, there's a slide that has schools on the top of it. I just want to make sure that I understand this. Right here.
Right,
Okay. So in the second bullet there, it says you can get contingent approval if it passes all tests for adequate public facilities except for schools. So, right? So my question is, who could tell me, not tonight, but what the road mitigation is for 160 units, which are certainly going to cause an increase of more than 50 trips a day? I assume there's some road modification to West Nursery Road or something?
As those developments come in, new developments that come in, and because even when this plan is submitted, there's a number that is produced out of that. It is applied to the totality of that road utilization. So when even if it's not built yet, they apply it because there's a future anticipation of that number being applied to it. And so the new development comes in and they have to meet whatever requirements that exist, even if that isn't built. The numbers are already applied to that utilization.
Okay. But theoretically, if this subdivision got approved before last year, North County High School would have been over capacity, so it should have to wait 6 years, right?
Or mitigate, or come up with a mitigation.
Well, I don't know where we're building another school.
No, right.
Right, where that's happening.
Right,
but that's why I'm asking when it was approved.
Or it's 55 and older. But I don't.
That's why I'm asking when it was approved. All right, and then I have another question about vape shops. Should I ask that now, or you want me to wait? So, is it I assume because there are 3 of them, or were 3, in a strip shopping center on Camp Mead Road, that they are all fine zoning wise. So would any conversation about trying to keep those away from a stone's throw from an elementary school and a half a mile from 2 other schools be a council legislation
Council,
piece?
100%.
All right, so I'll talk to you
Yep.
offline. Thank you.
100%. We did the same thing with marijuana dispensaries. Like there was a council, couldn't be, that's 100% council to pass that law.
When you get that information on the 180.
Which 100? Okay. Yeah. Because you can go online and actually, if you don't know, there's actually a website. It's probably one of those links. You can actually see applications that have been submitted, applications that are being approved, and they're by council district. You can say, well, which ones are all in council district 1? Either requested from planning and zoning, or you give it our office and we can produce something for you. But you can search exactly what those applications are online right now and see even if they aren't approved, you can see the ones that are just submitted. Yes. Correct. Not that I'm aware of.
And it's not just Hoyt's. Right around the corner from Hoyt's, where I had the name of the road. Now I can't get it.
Yeah,
but
begins
it's
with a
also
C,
off
right?
of Andover International. They want to put another chunk, and then between Maryland and Harrison, off of Andover, they want to put about 370 something. I think, Carol, that's the whole 327. And then where I'm picking the bone with you is coming out of the airport. Terminal Road that was supposed to go up to where the hotels are and curve and make it easier for the hotels to get a different route to the airport. And that's another development that you have. And when you add all those 4 up,
Yeah.
that's over 800 units.
Correct. Correct. Again, if they don't meet the AP, whatever development. No, not that I'm aware. So
I want to say one more.
Old Mill is getting I think they're in the queue right now to get the most updated high school. That's Old Mill. Old Mill is the next high school. There's no high school that I'm aware of. The only thing I'm working on is making sure I identify some money to put a second exit out of North County High School. So I already know exactly what I want to do with it, and I've already identified a resource that's going to come to build that second entrance into North County's complex.
So,
more like 3 years.
When you talked about utility review, does that include electricity generation? Because we seem to have changed. Well, it should, because we seem to have switched gears here. Before it was all about conservation, and now we're going full speed ahead because of data centers, and everybody can see the price of electricity going up as a result. You're trying to get the transmission lines from Pennsylvania, and that's been a very slow, difficult process. You add 800 homes, and you're adding a very large electricity load also. So if the utility people are only looking at water, that's not the only utility. If you're not going to have the electricity to support that, we're all going to start experiencing brownouts. Okay? I mean, I don't understand why you said no there. That would seem to me to be a critical part of the utility part of the review.
So I think when we have those commission meetings on the planning committees, I think this is where those conversations should originate, so that they are literally the seed for when legislation is formulated by the county executive, by the administration, I should say. And so having something like that as a review mechanism, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think, but it's the first time you and I have had that conversation about it. And so that would be a perfect conversation for these planning committees as they talk about how do we evolve so that we don't end up like California or New York City, quite frankly, that has had a bunch of blackouts as well as they build their power capacity based off of their consumption. So it's a double-edged sword. It's like we're trying to fix a plane while we're flying it, and it's really hard because some things we got to meet as legislators, and obviously as the planning they're just planning. You tell them to go plan, that's what they do. They're going to plan. They're not looking at who's impacted by it. They're just planning.
Well, you're
it's really
looking
up
at
to
long-range forecasting. You
Yes.
got to consider the electricity usage too.
So the one thing with that, I agree with you 100%. We all know government moves so fast, right? Like, so.
And efficiently.
No, exactly. So the thing that really helps move government in a lot of ways is the private sector. And we see it through these data centers, good, bad, ugly, whatever you think about it, they are happening, right? And they are impacting our communities, good, bad, ugly. They are impacting everybody. So we need to learn to adapt and change what we're doing. And if that's including a new type of review or something, that's something that I think should absolutely be considered. And that's what Mr. Smith was saying is when we have these committee meetings and advisory boards and all these things, we really want to hear everything. And again, tonight I came to present, but I'm also coming to listen. So everything I'm hearing tonight, I'm going to report back. I've already started a draft email to my team sitting back there in the corner, right? So I do understand that there are a lot of issues that the government is not addressing because of X, Y, and Z, whether it be new ideas that are happening or new developments that are happening. And I'm not talking buildings with residential, even though that is a big concern. I'm talking about the long-term effects of new industries per se coming in. So.
But part of that legislation is done with the groundwork that's established by the committees, that they put the policy in place, do the reviews, and say, well, what are other jurisdictions doing before we just haphazardly put something in place. That's the first time I've heard.
Same here, and when the thing is too, with these data centers, just for example, being a relatively new thing in Maryland, we don't know what's going to happen in 4 years, and that's in between these long-range planning aspects. So it's very difficult for us to anticipate things. We have no idea what's coming, which is why, from a long-range planning perspective, I always like to make sure our emails are wide open, our phone calls or our phones are always open. Give us a call, email us if you're comfortable emailing us. Let us know your thoughts. We may not be able to do anything with it right away, but we do collect public comments throughout our time working, because we never know when something's going to pop up where we can actually use, look what LSIA said, let's look into this more, right? Or look what people in South County or over in Riva, wherever, right? We take this information, and while at times it seems like we're not doing anything with it, we are making sure we have essentially a library of comments that we can come back to. And that tonight, for example, that we may not do anything with it for a few years, but in a few years, maybe we're working on a community plan up here. And we say, hey, is this still how you guys believe in things? And if you guys say, yeah, then we have that foundation ready to roll. If you say, no, we've actually changed our minds, we think this, then we can easily start that conversation with you all again. And we want to make sure, again, public comment is one of the most important things in our job, because we again plan for the community. We plan for people who work here, who live here, who visit here. We want to make sure that this county is really the best place for all, as cliche as that is with that tagline, right? But it's true. I really want to make sure that anybody who has a comment to say says it. I want to make sure everyone's comfortable telling us what their vision for the future is.
Bethesda like Weber wants, and if we wanted Bethesda,
sure.
Just to provide you all context again, it's so important, because sometimes you got to see what's not happening. If you look at the light rail stations, there were 3 sites, for example. There was an effort to make those MXDU. That's 44 units per acre at all the light, because they're TOD sort of locations. I am the one that actually went in there and actually pulled those back and put a sector plan, because I know the county is looking for locations to build. The light rail station in Glen Burnie, that particular parcel had the potential to have like 8,000. He's my 8,000 units on that the acreage that's over there by the light rail, on that large parking lot. I'm the one that got I got beat up because I delayed that. The state was even weighing in on. I don't know if you read about it, but I got beat up because I'm like, no, that's not that. Let's focus on infrastructure. That's exactly what I said in the paper. In fact, the county exec got, along with the state housing director, they all sort of put pressure on me. We want to designate this now so that we have opportunities in the future. And I don't necessarily disagree with them. I just didn't want 8,000 units being flopped on there because I know it was going to impact you all. So there was a lot of heat I got on that end. We did confirm that it wasn't going to be the totality of that parking lot, more like 20 acres instead of I want to say it was like 200 acres over there initially that was being reviewed. And so we get them to think about a smaller portion of it. But I will say housing is a critical issue. You mentioned multi-generational folks coming here. There are about 6,000 people every single year that either graduate high school from Anne Arundel County school systems or the community college, and they go into the workforce, about 6,000. We only approve, on average, around 2,400 housing units per year that has been built. That's what opens up in Anne Arundel County, around 2,400. But yet we have like 6,000 plus that are moving into the county or want to move into the county every single year. Many of them graduating from our institutions to work here. So it's a lot of pressure on us to come up with a solution to solve that problem. And so I've been I've been burned by trying to protect. Listen, when I hear a development about Linthicum. Look, I know the pain from the overlay. You guys spanked me. I remember the belt. I'm telling you, I remember how it felt. And so ever since then, I have always been cautious about anything that, yes. I'm telling you, I remember that belt. And so I don't want to get hit again with the belt. And so every time I hear Linthicum, I'm like, oh my God, what is it? I call them, just like we did on this corner. They wanted to they even wanted to try to do R from R1 to, what was it? R5 or something. They were going to try to, and you all were like, no, because of the way it was configured, we're going to keep it R1. So what do? I told the county and the team that was put together, I say, nope, they wanted R1, we're going to keep it R1. That's what I've been doing for the last few years. Yes. Yeah. Listen, just know your belt is legitimate. It is real. I'm a child of the 80s, and so I remember what those belts felt like. So I don't want to get whooping from Linthicum. So I try my best to make sure I find a balanced approach to make sure you all have what you have up here is a really good area, and I'm trying my best to protect that in the best way that I can.
And we don't want a lot more building.
No, I trust me. I hear it, but every community is saying the same thing in the whole county. Every single community. No more development in those areas. And so.
But they're doing it north. They just started doing it south.
So we are. We're doing things to try to open it up in other areas. Up here is where we have sewer and water. He mentioned that most of who was that that mentioned that? Was it you? About infrastructure, sewer and water. That was probably sewer and water. And so you have infrastructure up here, which is why it makes sense for a lot of developers that want to build. They look for parcels, and you have some motivated homeowners who have an acre, may have 2 acres, that are willing to sell it. And so once they sell it, it's out of our hands at that point. As long as it's residential and it's the code, they're doing whatever's in the code, they're going to be allowed to build it. Well, he takes those one little plots and then off of 690. Yeah. Right. So.
I want to go back to the schools for a minute, and I know I'm beating a dead horse, but if we're going to have 800 units between all these different locations, and the school board says, okay, you cannot build here for 6 years because we are full. Correct me if I'm wrong. As long as that got approved, and that at the end of that 6 years, then they can build.
Yeah.
Who is going to go back to the schools? Because the county, from my understanding, County council is the one who approves the money for the school system.
Yeah, well,
If the council hasn't approved enough money for the school system to build another school, to buy more property, to do any expansions, how are the schools the ones that continuously get pooped on, for lack of better words? If nobody's going to go back and say, well, we still don't have the infrastructure, you can't build after that 6 years, all we're doing is putting the schools in an overcrowded situation all over again. And you're never going to get out of that.
Just-
Never.
But see, after that
True,
memorial,
true statement. Just to
if they still don't have it, they still shouldn't be able to build it.
well, that part is not that's higher. That's above my pay grade as far as that Supreme Court weighing in on that decision.
After all these things are taken care of, then that 6 years starts.
Yeah, I think they got to go through that final.
They got to go through, so putting all the teeth in that and making sure they have everything done. They have the energy issues. I've done a lot of work in a lot of other jurisdictions. A lot more stringent. It take 2 years to go through all these things. To get all
Yeah.
the approval. It's that'll give you at least a heads up on what's going to go on. And then at the same time, why doesn't the county at some point work on finding a way to extract money from these developers to help with these efforts?
So we do. Here's the problem. They just passed the cost on to that to the homeowner, to the house, and so that the problem that we're getting inundated now. If you look at my email, or if you go do a poll of what's important to people here in Anne Arundel County, I guarantee you cost of housing is probably at the top of it. And so they're like, well, what are you doing to address housing? Because now if you're going to rent someplace, it's probably $2,500 to rent someplace. If you're going to buy a house, your mortgage, the average house here to purchase is $508,000, somewhere in that ballpark, the average. So if you're that's what I'm that's yeah. It's insane. And so if you're one of those 6,000 people that's coming into the workforce every year, we're not turning, you go back 50 years, you had people living in houses for 30 years. Their whole family grew up in that house. And today you got people staying in houses for like 5 to 7 to maybe even 10 years. So the turnover is higher. The problem is because when that turnover is higher, when you buy your house for $300,000 and then 5 years later someone offers you $500,000 for it, you're not going to say, no, I don't want to raise the value of houses in a county. You keep that extra $200,000. I'm just going to sell, give me $300 what I paid for it. Hell no, that's not going to happen. You're going to take that $500,000. Then you go sell it 5 years later, and someone offers you, because there's no supply or the cost is going up. They're going to sell it to that person or offer $650,000. They're not going to say, you know what? I don't want that $650. Keep that extra $150,000. No, the problem is our cycle of we call it cycle of operations when it comes to our M16s. That's the Marine that's coming out of me. But that turnover is going over too fast. So it's artificially elevating and increasing the rate at a much higher pace. So it's pricing out people, those 6,000 that are coming into the county every single year or graduated. They live in the county. They're just becoming adults, and their mom and parents are kicking them out, or they're staying in your basement because they're 22, 23 years old, and you're trying your best to make sure your kids have an affordable solution to work. That's the problem. We are also part of the problem because what's the market rate? It begins with a C. What is it? No, not the interest rate. It's called it begins with a C. It's no, not the boomers, but nonetheless, we're because civilians like capitalism. That's what I'm thinking about. Capitalism it drives a lot of folks. Like I guarantee you, everyone in here, if you go and sell your house and somebody offers you $200,000 more than what you pay for it, I guarantee you're going to take it. I bet I will give you my entire check. No, I'm saying if you sell it. I'm saying if you're selling your house that you've already made a decision to leave, if someone offers you $200,000 more than what you pay for it, I guarantee you're going to take that highest you're going to take that highest offer. So how do we solve that for the folks that are the 6,000 that are still coming into the county, into the workforce or living here? It's a complicated problem. I am just trying my best to make sure Linthicum, which is in my mind a historical, generally single family home sort of neighborhood, I do want to preserve it. And so I've operated on the fringes of the Linthicum area over the, since 2012 that I've at least been involved in some capacity with some of those decisions. So I'm not going to run away. Like I said, I have not been perfect in the 12 years that I've been involved in Anne Arundel County government. And as I mentioned, I felt the belt. I understand what it is. And since then, I have kept my hands to make sure we keep this area specifically under control, so you don't get these rapid developments. I'm sorry.
Back to what they were asking. If a development is approved, right, say it's 800 units, and the clock is ticking, who's responsible for ensuring that the school system and everything else is adequately built up to support these units in 6 years?
I would say there are three of us. I think there's a school board member that should be paying attention to what's going on. There's a county council member who should be paying attention to what's going on, and there's the county executive who should be paying attention to what's going on. Those three individuals, in my mind, should be aware of the issues that are impacting their schools within their districts, so that they can advocate. My whole job is to advocate. So I know that there's a problem with some of the schools, which is why we've been advocating for more dollars for. I got a plan, actually. I'm trying to bring in several $100 million of private money to help with our capital program, so we can increase our capacity to do more. The other thing I want to do is control the cost. The other part that's impacting us, and this isn't God over here that's doing this, Bob, and I love him to death. Is the cost of things is crazy. We're spending in excess of $500 per square foot to build things. So our CIP program is about $1 billion over a 6-year period. Severna Park High School, when we built that 8 years ago, I think it cost us $140 million, somewhere in that ballpark. Now, the next high school that we're looking at is probably going to be $190 million. You said 7-1 was like 170, 100. Oh no! It was about we programmed $170 million for Old Mill for 7-Run school. It was definitely about 100. And so the new school that we're getting told projections on is about $190 million. So the higher, the more these things cost, the less impactful your CIP programs. It doesn't. So now instead of doing 20 projects with $1 billion, you might be able to only do 15 projects with $1 billion. And in 10 years, you might be only be able to do 10 projects. So unless we raise more revenue, and it's only two ways to do that, either bring business in and economic development or raise taxes. You all don't want taxes raised. You don't want that. So how do we get more business in here to actually drive and increase the tax base through income tax or other sort of revenue generating mechanisms, so that we can add to that portfolio to build that? So that's the solution. That's the creativity we have to think of to be able to address the shortfalls when it comes to the schools.
So
Swear to God.
you're basically saying that once these are approved, the county's going to take care of it. They're going to make sure that we have adequate schools and then roads.
We are way, Anne Arundel County is way behind when it comes to historically. I always compare it to Howard. They got the same amount of high schools as us, and they got half the students, right? Their police force, their budget, our budget we just passed was $2.5 billion in July or in June 15th. It was $2.5 billion. Howard County's was $2.4 billion. They got half the population. So they're taxing 300,000 people at a rate that we're taxing 600,000 people. So they got double the revenue to service half the population. So they have more amenities and they have more capacity over there. So unless we do something fundamentally different, we're going to be restricted by the growth of our tax revenue. We only get about $80 million every single year. If we don't raise anything from a tax, if we don't raise the income tax or a property tax, if we just stay flat, the average growth is about $80 million a year. That's the average. Take the last 25 years, go back to 2000, go look at it's online. You can look it up. I've already done it. I got a spreadsheet on my computer that has every single budget that we've approved over the last 25 years. It's only about $80 million of new growth that happens on average every year. 40 of it automatically goes to the school for operational costs, not for building things, just for salaries and things like that. So now we're left with $40 million that has to pay for the other county services, police, and operational needs. That's probably 20 of it easily right there. So the key is, how do we generate more revenue to do those things in a much more efficient and expedient manner, I should say. So that's the problem we have to solve. I hope that answers your question, but I'm just telling you straight data. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Did you say that the rest of the county is also open for development and business?
We have expanded development in other parts of the county. Yes. When I first got here, I'm telling you, and I know you probably have heard Keep South County rural. There's a bunch of land down there. Farmers and everything. We have actually moved some development down there. We're getting beat up about that as well. And so, but yes, it's not in the same vein as up north. I will give you that. But we have, over the last 5 years, increased the amount of homes that are being developed south of 50, if that makes any sense. I have told them District 1 is already developed. For up here, it's about redevelopment. Like, it's not like we need more development. We just need redevelopment of some of the corridors that exist here in Anne Arundel, in District 1 specifically, along Ritchie Highway. For me, if I want to do redevelopment, it's around those major corridors that can handle capacity, or we can easily expand from a road infrastructure standpoint to handle that additional growth. But that's also why I want to sort of mitigate what's going to go on Belgrove Road. It's either 180 acres worth of houses or 80 acres worth of houses. And so I'm a math guy. I would rather the 80 acres instead of 160. I'm sorry, 80 and 80. 160 acres. And so if I'm wrong, please tell me, and we will step out the way and let them do the 160. But they have so far said to us that they are willing to work with us and will only build on 50% of that. We had a bill last year that we pulled, or earlier this year we pulled it, but they have committed to just building residential on just 50% of that acreage, even though they don't have to. They could build on all 160 60 of the acres. So those are the things that we're trying to do to mitigate the growth, especially up in this area, because we can't say no or hold them off forever. There's a clock, and it's ticking, but that's part of the solutions.
Pete, could
Yes, ma'am.
as far as the overlay goes, though, like, how much more can it really, take? Or, I mean, there's space there. It sounds to me like they could increase the housing stock. I know that there's this Concord Circle.
Yep, and they've already started developing there. They've been developing there.
Right, but there's, I guess, a one part of it that has, I'm not sure if it was approved initially, but like it was a site development plan or whatever you guys would call it, that has been kind of sitting like
idle for a number of years.
Right.
Yep.
But like that's something that's not even really on the radar here. And then you have the 800 other,
I thought that was part of that. No, it is. I thought that was part of that growth. Yes, that's International Drive. Yes.
No, this was. No. Yeah, there are several commercial buildings as well as residential. But, I mean, isn't that kind of better?
My goal was to drive commercial when I even initially thought about the overlay.
Like restaurants and stuff?
That corridor right there, more restaurants. Like I said, we either raise taxes or we generate taxes another way. I don't want to pull more money out of your pocket. So business is the way to do
what
that.
they want.
Unless you tell me there's some other secret sauce that I'm unaware of, that's how we generate more tax revenue. So that's why I was okay with trying to do some, when the overlay originally, back in 2015, originally came about, it really was to enhance how West Nursery Road was going to be developed in a mixed use stance, because we had a bunch of commercial that this was before COVID, and then it changed the model. COVID kind of changed the model, but we were trying to drive traffic and along West Nursery Road specifically. That was the major intent, to have more commercial-like activity through this corridor. Plus, there was a bunch of Fanexes over there, 1, 2, and 3. The agency had a bunch of other buildings at the time that have since relocated to NBP in Emerson, which is in Laurel. And so there's been some changes, but at the end of the day, the goal was to always try to drive that commercial corridor so that we can enhance and increase the tax revenue so we can pay for these things that are driving you all insane.
Okay. One last thing that I don't have time to really, I guess, go into too much here, but adding as you know, and probably a lot of other people do as well, the transit-oriented development area between, I know I'm very tired, Benton Avenue and Music Lane, basically the commercial area of Linthicum, was, I guess, voted or approved to be a travel-oriented development area so that it could be really, and then there were, proposals for what could end up there, including mixed use, like businesses, homes,
Correct.
Kind of surrounding the light rail to kind of make better use of the light rail.
Yes.
And during the Region 1 planning, although I guess it was a little separate, but basically, if the land use for that area changed, and it did change to mixed use, then the whole area can be rezoned as mixed use under the administrative.
So yes, that's correct.
Administrative process as opposed to through the county council.
Which is why I put the sector. So here, I had a battle with the county exec. I won't say that it's been easy. And not to say he's a bad person or anything like that, but the TOD conversation with Region 1 specifically, I was pushing back on a lot of that, which is, it created some friction for me, which is fine. I mean, that's what you guys put me here for. But that's why we also put in those sector plans, because the sector plans require you all to be involved in that process, which is, it can elongate any sort of development that's potentially going to be there, but it also ensures you have a voice and you can use your power in numbers mechanism when it comes to the actual changes that do occur. The county exec, with that new law that we passed, if it's in the planning piece of it, even if the map didn't change, the actual zoning layer did change, as long as it meets some certain conditions, at some point the zoning officer, I believe, can go back and actually make it a specific designations that exists within, mixed use or whatever it is that they want to designate it as, to fit that category, which is why we put the sector plans in place so that you all involved in that, and it's not just the county that makes that decision. So that was a battle, during that month and a half to try to get them to push back off of these corridors specifically, and like I said, they're just looking. The county and the county exec, he's looking holistically at the county. So I get his where he's sitting at. I'm not looking holistically. I'm looking just at District 1, specifically Linthicum, and I'm like, no, they don't want all of this additional development. Trust me, I've said it, and you can go back and look at all of the videos because it's online, and you can see that discussion. And how I was pushing back on trying to get these higher densities along those corridors because I know what you guys are experiencing already. And so that is on the record.
But I just want to clarify something, though. That would only be triggered if a developer actually came in and bought the land.
Yes.
It's not like the county's going to suddenly develop, say, okay, we need to develop all this area without somebody buying it.
That is correct. However, the reason it's a TOD is to drive interest into those areas.
I get that. But if the current folks don't want to sell it, then, or they're just they might hold out for however long or whatever. But I guess my point is that it's not
automatic.
Right. And that the whole sector plan would only come into play if there was I don't know how it works, but a plan to develop it or a proposal to develop it.
Well, the sector plan is going to come regardless if I think they're getting through the rest of the region plans, and after that, those sector plans will be initiated regardless of whether someone buys it or not. That will trigger because that's supposed to drive. You all supposed to provide in that sector plan the vision of what it should be. Right?
So the zoning could happen, the rezoning to mixed use like village, which was what they were proposing in the what do you call it? The regional plan.
Yes.
Draft, or I guess what was eventually approved, that so that rezoning could happen regardless of whether or not, or regardless of the plan.
I think the way I read the law when we passed it, it still required someone to initiate. The sector plan is going to happen because that'll say, here's the lateral limits. We don't want any building over 50 feet. We don't want any density higher than village, or we don't want, like, that will happen regardless. And the triggering of the actual land use, it could happen before that, but it may
the
not.
land use has already happened. So the actual zoning.
But the zoning layer, the actual zoning layer, doesn't automatically change after the sector plan.
Okay.
But that could be triggered by someone submitting an application to build there.
Okay. Alrighty. We're at 8:59. So I think we could just wrap it up. I mean, everybody's been here for 2 hours, and I want to thank everybody for coming and asking some really great questions. Our friends from OPC, we really appreciate.
Yes, thank you.
You spending the time and your excellent presentation, and thank you, Councilman Smith, as well. So our next meeting will be October 8th, and our speaker is TPA, but we will send out an email ahead of time.
Talk into it.
All right. Thank you all very much.